Hi, I'm Susan with Prairie Quilt and Fabric Shop in Lenexa, Kansas, and I'm going to show you how to put together the Midi Bag by QuiltSmart. To get started making this bag, you will need to start out with a pattern from QuiltSmart, and it's called the Midi Bag. And this pattern has two panels in it to make two bags. So the panels look like this, and they are a interfacing that is a fusible interfacing with lines and grids all over it. I'm going to show you how to use that. And then another thing you'll need is your fabric that you're going to do it with. So you need 108 2-inch squares. You can easily get that out of a charm pack, and that's what I've done a few times, is just cut my charm pack up into fourths, and it will use over half of the squares in the charm pack. So you get your 2.5 squares that way. Another way is to use jelly roll strips, but you only need about 10 of them. You could get 3 or 4 bags out of this, but you'll have a lot left over if you're just making one, and it'll give you the strips you need to do your handles as well. Okay, then you're also going to need a lining fabric. Okay, so in this case I used a lining, and then I have enough extra here to line the handle on it. So the lining of the handle is different print from the outside of the handle. You also need an interfacing if you want to interface it, and I used a fusible batting. This is kind of a medium mid-weight fusible batting, fusible fleece, and it gives it some nice body without being real stiff. If you wanted to use soft and stable, you could. I haven't done that yet. It's a little clumsy, bulky to work with on this when turning it, but you could do it. It would work. You could also do it without anything inside of it at all. You could just have it, it would be just a soft bag that wouldn't have any body or shape to it. So the first thing you'll do is get out your interfacing, and you'll need to cut it up into 4 different panels. So here is one panel right here, and there's 4 of them on here. You're going to cut along here. If you use your rotary cutter and ruler, you'll get nice straight lines. Where it has dotted lines out here, those are your cutting lines. It has little scissors on here telling you where to cut. So you'll cut those out, and I have one of them right here, and what I'm going to do is take my little 2.5-inch squares and just start placing them on the grid. And let's see, I'll just kind of have a variety of colors on here, and you can do it any way you want to. Sometimes I'll line them up here, sometimes I'll spread the whites out, then I'll spread the reds out, and so forth. So we'll just kind of see what we got here. Okay, so you want to put them right there on the squares, and the raw edges of each square is going to go right on the dotted lines on here. So I have them all laid out on here, and I'm going to make sure all my little raw edges are kind of butted up to each other. I'm going to take my hot iron, and I forgot to trim off this, so I'm going to cut off on this dotted line right here, because I don't want to get the fusible on my iron. If you're worried about that happening, you can use applique pressing sheet or a piece of parchment, the kind like you would use in your kitchen, parchment paper. Okay, and you could lay it on there if you're worried about it. I have found that it doesn't really cause a problem for me, even though there's real slight openings in there. It doesn't seem to be a problem. Okay, I'm going to take my iron. I'm just going to set it on here. And you want to let it set for about 5 to 10 seconds on everything in there. You don't want to run your iron across it, because you might cause those squares to move and slide. They're down there pretty good. I'm just going to slide it across. Make sure I give enough heat time to everything on here. Okay, then what I'm going to do is let it set for just a minute to cool off before I move it, because if I move it while it's hot, the little pieces might loosen from the interfacing. All right, so take your panel that you've fused your squares onto the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew this way first, and I'm going to fold it right there along the dotted line, and it folds very nicely because your little squares have met there, and so it just makes a natural crease line. Okay, I'm using a 1/4 inch foot. You can do whatever you want. Just try to get a 1/4 inch seam allowance. If it happens to be a little more, that's okay, but you just want it to be consistent throughout the whole project for the little squares to line up when you start putting the panels together. Okay, there I've done all my short seams. Okay, then what you want to do is cut all of your little seam intersections here. So everywhere you have some squares coming together, you're going to clip the little seams. And if you happen to cut your stitching line, don't worry about it because you're going to be sewing over that again later. So do all of those. Okay, now we're going to press this. So there's little arrows on here. So this row here, there's a little arrow pointing this way. You press this row in that direction. These two rows, there's an arrow pointing in that direction. Since I'm right-handed, I'm going to turn it this way, and I'm going to start down the middle. So that's just what I like to do. And I'm going to carefully and quickly press it because my iron is hot and the interfacing is polyester. You don't want to melt that polyester. So I got that going in one direction. It's not perfect yet, but I'll get it finished up better later. Okay, so then I'm going to take this one in this direction and this one in this direction. Okay. Now I'm going to turn it over and press it better because this is all cotton and I can use a hot iron on there. And while I'm doing it, I'm going to make sure that my seams are going the direction they're supposed to be. I can just kind of feel right through there. Give it lots of hot steam. And it's nice and flat. Okay, now the next step is to sew the two lengthwise seams. The same construction technique. Okay, so this is what it looks like on the back, and then you're going to press these two lengthwise seams in the direction it says to here. So I'm going to go this way. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to push my iron against those seams because I want them pressed all the way open. I don't want to just come down on it or it might cause little folds and tucks in the seam lines there. And you have one panel done. Now I have all four of them completed. So we are ready to move on to the next step. The next thing you're going to do is cut out your lining, and you want 4 lining pieces the same sizes as your panel pieces, and then if you want an optional pocket you can put one of those in there. The instructions tells you how to put that pocket together. It's real simple, and I think I'm going to add a pocket to this bag. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is put these panel pieces together, and they're put together in a kind of unusual technique, but they have little markings on them. So there's a double dot here and a double dot there. They're not in the same place on there. So these are going to be sewed together here to make an L shape. And then these have triple dots on them, so you don't want to put a double dot with a triple dot. There's triple dots here and triple dots over here. So that means these are going to be sewed together like that. And also another way to check yourself is to make sure your bottom centers are all together there. There's 2 bottom center squares there and 2 bottom center squares here, so you know you got it done right. Okay, I've sewn along my lines there where the double and triple dots were, double, triple over here, and there's a line here. Do not sew on that line. The pattern will remind you about that. It is not a sewing line. First time I ever made it, I did sew on that line and it did not make sense. Okay, so I'm going to sew these 2 L-shaped pieces together. So far, everything seems pretty easy. The whole thing is easy, but this part is just a little bit unusual technique. So what you're going to do is take this, have it laid out like this. You're going to take one section, and the pattern gives really good directions. You just have to read them closely. They will tell you what to do. But I'm going to bring that up here. This line, dashed line here, goes across this way, so it's folded on that. This comes up here. It doesn't go all the way up there. And then I'm going to pin these right there on the seams so that the seams interlock and they'll match up very nicely. And if everything doesn't, you just ease it in so it'll go together. And I'm going to sew right along there. And I'm checking to see how my seams look. They came together just perfectly. Okay, we're going to do that again. We're going to come over here to the next edge. That diagonal line will help us to find where that is. This is going to come up here. It looks the same way, but everything's not two-dimensional anymore. It's getting a three-dimensional shape to it. This is what your bag looks like on the outside. This is the inside, and now we're going to do the lining that has the fusible fleece fused to it already. Done in the same technique. You're going to sew two pieces together to make an L shape, and two pieces to make another L shape, following the directions. It will tell you have to do it exactly as it says on the instruction sheet. And then I'm going to put the pocket on one, and when I get these sewed together, I'm going to join it to the bag. Okay, so the bag is done and the lining is done. So I'm going to turn the bag right side out. And the next thing we need to do is make the handles. Okay, so just follow the directions. Part of the interfacing that you have is on half of it, and then the fusible fleece on the other half. Okay, on your bag here, inside there's a little line that tells you where to put your lining or your handle on there. I'm going to put the lining side towards me. In this case, the lining is the same color as the handle, but you could do it differently. Okay, I'm going to put that in there and put a couple pins in. Okay, make sure it's lined up on those lines right across there. I'm going to bring this around and put it over here. And then I'm going to baste across all four of them. Next thing we do is put the two together. So I'm going to insert the bag into the lining, or you could do the lining into the bag, and I'm going to match up all the 4 of the points, because there's 4 points around that goes around here. So I'm going to match those up and pin those all the way around. So when you do this, each point that you have has the strap sewed to it. It's basted on there, all right? That's what I went and did, is basted those on there. Then when you put those together, that's going to be caught right in there, because when you sew, you're going to sew across here. You're not sewing all the way out to your point. If you use Soft and Stable to put this together, you might want to use Wonder Clips instead of pins to get this together all the way around. Okay, when I get to an inside seam intersection here, I'll just make sure that those are matched up. So I've got that seam, my lining seam and my outer bag seam coming together there. Okay, this seems to be a little bit bigger here. I'm just going to pull that and ease it in. Now I'm going to sew all the way around the whole thing. I'm going to turn it right side out through an opening that I left in the lining, which I forgot to mention as I was putting that together. All right, I'm going to start just anywhere you want to. Pull out my pin. I'm going to sew along the sewing line. And I don't need to back stitch because I'm going to reinforce right over that when I come back around. Okay, when I get up to here to where the handle strap is, I'm going to sew along that line, but I want to make sure that I don't catch the edge of the handle in my side seam there. I want it to be only in this part here. So if you get all done and find out that you haven't done that well on one or more of them, you'll have to go back and rip out a little bit. When I get to an inside corner here, I'm going to leave my needle in, pivot, and then turn. And I don't know if you noticed, but when I came up to my next point here, I put my fingers under there to feel for my handle to make sure I wasn't going to get it caught in this side seam. Okay, I noticed right here that I didn't do a very good job of catching in my lining edge. So I'm going to rip that out a little bit, pull that up, and get that caught in there. It's not looking very pretty on the inside, but that doesn't matter. Got a lot of threads hanging out there. Now I'm going to turn it right side out. The ends here need to be trimmed off and your corners here need to be clipped, but I'm going to make sure that I don't have any things I need to do over, any repairs to make before I do that. So I'm going to turn it right side out, get a close look at it, and then we will turn it back to do the trimming and clipping. So the opening was left in the lining, just one side of it. Okay, now I'm going to check around here. I don't need to put that together yet. I'm just going to kind of check around here, make sure I don't have any holes. Looks like I have a little repair I need to do there. I'm going to put one of my Wonder Clips on there. So I need to kind of double stitch over that. Okay, how does my handle look? Okay, it's coming out there real nice. As you can see, I didn't get it caught in the side over here. If I did, then it wouldn't look that nice up there. Okay, that one looks good. That handle looks good. Looks pretty good in there. Okay, so I'm going to go fix that one little spot and then we'll trim it. So I have to turn it wrong side out again. Okay, so I got my repairs fixed. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to clip into the corner there. I don't want to clip my stitching, but clip almost to it. I'm going to cut across here. I would do better with a regular pair of shears. When I clip, I'm going to clip to where the stitching goes to a point. If it happens to not be where it kind of goes in naturally at an angle, that doesn't matter. I want to go where the stitching is.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to come over here. All right, make sure I don't go too far. And cut across here again. Let's turn this right side out and one more time and see what we have. Okay, I'm going to push the lining into the bag. And it's starting to look like something. Look at that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is take the steam iron and press my seams, and I don't want the lining to show on the outside. So I'm going to have that outer fabric show just a tiny bit on the inside. I want to make that nice and flat. I don't want to get any tucks in there. I don't want to press it so that there's a fold in there. I want the seam all the way to the outside. This will help, is what will help to make a nicer looking bag. Roll that a little bit so the seam is flat in there, and then make sure my lining isn't showing on the outside. Okay, I'm going all the way around. I'm going to check my corners here to make sure I got a thread sticking out there. Make sure that those look good, that there's no holes or threads showing from the outside. Looks pretty good. That double stitching along there really reinforces those because there's a little strain on that part of the bag. Okay, it looks good on all 4 of them. And then my handles are pressed all the way out. Now I'm ready to top stitch it, and we're all done. I'm going to start my top stitching in an inside corner here where it would be least conspicuous to show where my stitching is starting and stopping. I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to do about a 1/4 inch. You can do whatever you want, but that seems to work real well. Move that over just a bit more. There we go. And I have a little bit longer stitch length that often looks nice for top stitching, so I have it on a 3.5 on this machine. I'm going to take my time going around here because I want to make sure it's nice and straight. When you get to another corner, again, make sure everything's flat. You don't want any tucks underneath, and then you're going to pivot at the corner. All right, now we're all finished. I'll take my favorite little poker here to kind of poke out these corners in the bottom of the bag. Get those out there. Here's my bottom. Remember the 4 little squares on the interfacing? They are right down there. You don't see them now. You'll want to trim off any threads that you see showing. The top stitching is not only decorative, but it does help reinforce all the seams, especially in these corners and across the handles here where they get lots of wear and tear. On the inside, I have my pocket right here, which is totally optional. You don't have to do the pocket. It's just an extra step. And then my opening is down here somewhere. Here. You can finish it off any way you want. You can hand whip it with just a needle and thread. I like to sew it by machine. It makes it stronger. So what I will do is just turn my edges in a 1/4 inch. And I'm just going to sew right along there. It'll show, it'll leave a little bit sticking out there, but it's inside the bag. It makes it nice and strong. Just do your best to make a nice, neat little stitching in there. And then you're good to go. Get your threads trimmed off and makes a nice little bag, makes a nice gift. I think with a Christmas theme like this, it would make a great gift package. So again, we are all finished with the bag, and they're so much fun to make. I just love making them. This one here is the first one I made. I'll go ahead and show you the inside where I stitched up the opening for in the lining. This one has a different lining for the handle, and this one here is made with these are all made with charm packs. So this is cute. This has a little loop on here. You can put some kind of key fob or something on. If you had your hardware, you wanted to put the hardware on there before you sewed it up, you could do that. This is inserted when you sew all the way around the top edge. You will put that little loop in there at that time. And then we also have the Mondo Bag, which is even bigger. And it is a totally separate pattern. Has enough in here to make one bag. And same technique. Made this very same way, just takes a lot more of the squares. Okay, so the pattern for the Midi Bag looks like this. Again, it comes with 2 panels in it. The instructions are very complete. Just follow what it says in there, and you can't fail. Just read it carefully and closely. The Mondo Bag is a totally separate pattern. Now, there's in the Midi Bag, there's 2 panels. If you want to make more, you can buy the panels by the yard or by the panel. So you'd get one panel, it would have 4 different panels on it to make one bag, including the 2 strips for the handles as well. So that is available separately, but you will need to purchase it the first time as a package with the pattern in it. And these are fun. They make great purses, sewing bags, knitting bags, beach bags, toy bags, all kinds of fun things you can do with them. So I hope you enjoyed that. Let us know if you have any questions, and we'll let you know where you can get the pattern.